Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I think I'm looking forward for us to having a hopefully deep conversation about our roles that we play in this nonfiction storytelling world. And I'm very excited to have these panelists here. I think they have a lot to share with us. So I'm not going to take this any longer because I want to get to it. And the way we're going to do it is I'm going to introduce each person. I'm going to show a clip, a trailer from their film. And then during the conversation, when we get back into the process, we'll show more clips from the film. But they all will have something to tell us as we go through. All right. So first is, one second, I'm trying to find, is Alex Takats. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Alex is a documentary filmmaker and verite cinematographer. He's based in New York City, and he graduated from the NYU's Tisch Film Program in 2013, where he was mentored by documentary filmmaker Marco Williams. Alex has worked with Heidi Ewing and Rachel Grady of Loki Films since 2012, collaborating on projects from Detropia, Norman Lear, Just Another Version of You, and One of Us. And today we're going to hear a little bit more about his work with One of Us. Take it away.
Hi there. So, One of Us, the film. I'm Alex, this is Jenny Morello. We're the co-cinematographers on the film. For about 3 years, we kind of dove into the Hasidic Jewish communities in Brooklyn, focusing on 3 individuals who decided to leave the fold, leave the community, and enter into the secular world. And our film kind of follows their journeys as they travel and face difficulties and the challenges that they endured.
Jenny, would you like to come in? I'll bring in Jenny as well. Jenny Morella is also a cinematographer on One of Us. She's a documentary filmmaker, cinematographer, and has directed Sesame Street's Child Resiliency Divorce series. Her cinematography has been, she's contributed her cinematography talents to many noted feature documentaries, including Half the Sky, Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide, Rancher, Farmer, Fisherman, Norman Lear as well, Just Another Version of You, and The Years of Living Dangerously. She's a former Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco in the field of public health. She holds a master's in fine arts from the School of Visual Arts in social documentary film. And numbers among her clients, major NGOs, including UNHCR, the International Rescue Committee, and Human Rights Watch. So, and the two have worked together on One of Us, so we're going to see right now the trailer to the film. And maybe, oh, his first. Well, how do you, I mean, we'll show the trailer first.
We don't have the trailer then here.
Okay, so we just have the clip. Jenny, do you want to talk to us a little bit more about your involvement and maybe setting up the clip for us?
Sure, we're going to go into the clip. Yeah, no, I can talk about it first. Yeah, so this film is very unique for different reasons, mostly because we were filming in a community that is scared of cameras and you can't really film with them. So from the very first shoot in our early days, it was kind of the challenges were trying to figure out how to capture this in a way that felt interesting and intimate, but also that we were kind of showing the community, but it also had a voyeuristic kind of element because we really never had access to the Hasidic community. They are scared of cameras. So a lot of what we were shooting was long lens on a 70-200. And the clip that we're going to watch, because I think it's easier to maybe explain it after we watch it, it's a really great example of a scene where one of our characters just happens to be in the community and meets someone, and then they start talking. So. Yeah. Okay, so that's a great example, I guess, of observational camera. I also have a cold, so excuse my nasally voice. So basically, we were filming with Ari, and he was sitting in the park on his laptop in South Williamsburg, and this man came up to him. And this had already kind of happened to us multiple times in filming, where random people would come up and our characters would know them, they would recognize them. And a few times we had started to discover that if we shot the face of the person they were talking to, there was no way they would ever sign a release that we would be able to show them in this movie. And when this man approached Ari, I remember thinking, and Alex, if you remember, because you were there too, I was like, shoot, this is like such a good scene, and we have to make sure that we capture this, but I can't shoot this guy's face, so how am I gonna cover this well if I can't come around and get this man's reactions? And he never noticed me, which to this day is still mind-boggling, because I was pretty obviously standing not that far from Ari with a camera, filming this entire thing happen. And the guy never noticed, and I just made sure that I shot it in a way that they could sort of cut it together, but the man's face was obscured enough that he wouldn't be recognizable. So that, I guess, is kind of...
Yeah, I mean, we realized pretty early on in the production that we weren't going to have the type of access that with the community, with the Hasidic community, that we would want ideally. But that was okay, and we accepted that, and that lent to how we were shooting it, which Jenny was talking about. So approaching the community, filming in the community from a distance, ended up working to our advantage because people weren't skittish of us. They didn't. We weren't too much of a footprint, and
Part of the question that comes up for me is that Ari is his name, the protagonist. He's taking a risk. In some ways, he's at the front line, sort of. How did you negotiate that with him in terms of his role and being there, engaging in that conversation, just generally?
Yeah, I mean, that's his personality. He was living in the community one day and out of it the next. He's a bold kid. A brave kid, and he made the decision to, take a computer out and into the middle of the park in a Hasidic neighborhood, and he's a tech wizard, so that fits right into his personality.
Okay, thank you. We'll be able to do some more deep dive in there. I want to introduce Ross Kaufman. Ross is an Academy Award-winning filmmaker of the documentary Born into Brothels. In 2014, Ross, along with Katie Chevigny, directed E-Team, which is a Netflix original documentary about 4 intrepid human rights investigators. The film debuted at the Sundance Film Festival and garnered Kaufman the Best Cinematography Award for a documentary feature. Ross served as executive producer on the documentary feature In a Dream, which was shortlisted for the Academy Award and nominated for an Emmy. He's also an adjunct professor at the School of Visual Arts and Social Documentary Master's Program. In addition, he has guest lectured at high schools and universities worldwide. In 2014, Ross co-founded and serves as creative director of Fictionless, a media company specializing in feature documentary films and short-form socially conscious branded content for clients as diverse as Apple, IMG, GE, Toyota, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I also noticed that you were additional camera on one of us.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's a little odd. I literally, I only shot one day, and I don't know why Heidi and Rachel did that, but I don't deserve the credit, dear these guys, because they did an amazing job.
So do you want to talk to us a little bit about the clip and what you want to show and maybe what you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. So this is from a movie called E-Team, as Michelle said. It's directed by Katie Chevigny and myself. I also want to say one thing. The Best Cinematography Award at Sundance, Rachel Beth Anderson also won the award, and we won it together, yeah. So this clip, I was going to show a clip that was sort of, cool from E-Team, you know, running around and massacres and bombs and this kind of stuff. The stuff was, you know, fairly well shot. And then I thought, you know what? I'm gonna show something that is really bad cinematography. And not really bad, but just a little bit off. And it was bad cinematography, but it ended up being good filmmaking. And basically what happened was, I was following one of our human rights investigators named Anya, and she was going through the day. She was in Russia, talking to all the news outlets about how Putin was supporting the Assad regime, and basically it was a long, long day, and then we got to this point. Oh, and before that, I had flown from New York to Moscow just before I started shooting. So I pretty much hadn't been sleeping for, this is my excuse anyway, I hadn't been sleeping for like 26 hours. And this is sort of this is what happened.
Yeah, that's a powerful scene. Tell us a little bit more about it. I kind of always go back to this question of trust and being there present. How did you navigate that?
Oh, it's funny, right? When we, well, first of all, when we started going into this apartment building, like I was so tired, and you know, you're doing a one-person band, and you're directing, you're producing, you're shooting, and by that time I just stopped asking questions. I didn't know where we were going. I was just, all right, just take me to where we're going, and I'll shoot it. But I did ask a question in the elevator. I said, how long have you been living in your apartment? And she said, it's not my apartment, it's my parents' apartment. I thought, oh my God, I have to shoot now a scene with her parents? I thought we were gonna go into her apartment, have some dinner, and sleep. So I picked my camera back up and I got it running, and then we walked into that place, and I mean, it's okay here, but that first shot going into the doorway, into the door, that was the worst shot ever. It was like pink or purple, because all the lights were so, we changed it a little bit. And then we go into the kitchen, and in terms of trust, you know, I don't know about a lot of you guys, but I'm shy about filming. Like, I like to put the camera down, get to know people, and then sort of pick it up. But I knew right away that they were pretty trusting. They just didn't, they were fine, you know. But at the same time, I was still a little camera shy. So, like, instead of doing this, I put it down here. I was looking at you know how we do that, looking at the monitor, sort of looking at them. And I didn't really think this scene would play, but I was, you know, and so I was sort of shooting like this and sort of going back and forth, asking questions, or sort of just gaining their trust as you know, in a way. But they were just so funny, they didn't care. But, and that's why I say, like, it's sort of bad camera work, because I wasn't really shooting. I was doing that half and half thing. And then, so I shot that scene, and then, if I go too long, tell me. I love the scene. And then finally, we got ourselves together, and we went into the living room where I shot a proper scene. Mm-hmm. You know, I sat there like this, and just sort of, you know, they were sitting at the table. It was really nice, and they said some great things, and I thought, that's the scene. And when I say bad camera work and good filmmaking, I credit my editor, David Teague, for the good filmmaking, because it's all, verite camera work, it's all about the editor. Yep. And if I'm telling you anything you already know, let me know. So I went into the editing room like a year and a half later to see the Moscow sequence. Played the whole thing, it was great, and then all of a sudden he gets to the apartment and he has this scene in there. And I said, what the hell's that scene doing in there, David? Like, it's awful. It's not awful, but it's hardly shot. And then I shot that other scene, and he said, Ross, the other scene is not nearly as good as this scene. I go, yes, it is. And you know, that idea that when you're shooting, you know what is great. But the truth is, it happens in the editing room, and that's where you decide. So he showed me both scenes, and for sure, this was much better, where I had no idea. And then the last thing is, Anya was always like super tough in the footage. Like she didn't like let her guard down. And this scene was the first time when she, you know, hugs her dad, you know, and you see this little girl. And I just love that moment. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. So we'll talk some more about it. And then I want to get to our next. I'm going to introduce the two of you together. That's okay, yeah. So Erica Cohn is a DGA and Emmy Award-winning director-producer who Variety recognized as one of 2017's top 10 documentary filmmakers. Her most recent films include Football We Trust, a Sundance 2015 premiere, and The Judge, which we're going to see a clip from, which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival this year. Erica is currently in production with another film titled Belly of the Beast. Amber Ferris? Amber Ferris is an award-winning documentary director and cinematographer. Her feature-length directorial debut, Speed Sisters, premiered at Hot Docs in 2015, and she's a cinematographer on this feature-length film called The Judge. It's having its U.S. premiere right here at the Doc NYC this week, right, or next week? It was yesterday. Okay, sorry. Okay, yesterday.
We have one more screening.
But there'll be another screening, right?
Tomorrow at 10:30.
Tomorrow, yeah. I highly encourage people to go see that. And Amber was also associate producer on Transparent Season 4 and is currently a senior producer on a National Geographic documentary series. So take it away as a team.
So The Judge chronicles the journey of Judge Khulud, the first woman judge to be appointed to the Sharia law or Islamic law courts in the Middle East. And we started this film in 2012, and I was listening to you, Ross, talk about the camera on the lap shots, and when you're very first starting to film, which is so awkward, and you're kind of like shooting on your lap and engaging with the participants in the film. And so this was the first few years of shooting, and then Amber and I had been talking about collaborating for a long, long time, and it was such an honor and a privilege to be able to work with her, and we really just shot the hell out of Palestine in a month together.
I'm still recovering, actually, so I have a shoulder issue that's hasn't recovered.
You started in 2012, but worked together for a month on the film?
Yeah, I had lived in Palestine for a long time. I was made Speed Sisters there, and I was very familiar with, the culture. And actually, Erica speaks better Arabic than I do, but and so it was quite easy. So Erica and I had been talking for a long time, and she had sort of enough funding for us to go back for a month. And we shot literally every single day for a month and finished the film. But I think we were able to do that both in terms because both of us had a lot of familiarity, but also you kind of know, after I'd lived there for so long, you kind of know where to go and what to. So a lot of logistics and stuff were a lot easier to handle. It's not often. I don't think you can often go in and shoot the way that we did and get as much done. But.
And then Amber ended up going back in for a couple of separate trips and getting final pickups and final scenes.
So do you want to set up we're seeing the clip or the trailer? Trailer now. Okay, so we're going to watch the trailer. So maybe you can tell, since I think we have different configurations. We have two directors of photography. We have somebody who does it all, producer direct, who's done it all, and then we have a team here who've collaborated. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of collaboration between the two of you here and how that worked?
So I will say with The Judge, there's so many different elements. I mean, we have the very intense kind of cinema verite courtroom drama, where Amber and I really worked together to figure out how to best capture the drama that was happening in court, and also how to preserve how to shoot a scene when people preferred to stay anonymous. And then we had a lot of the drone aerials, which captured Palestine's beauty in a way that we felt was incredibly important and in some ways had not been done before. And then we had kind of a very interesting process in doing recreations, in quotes, actually with Judge Khulud, and that was a totally different experience. And then we had the verite in Khulud's home. I mean, there was a really interesting stylistic mashup. And when I first talked to Amber about all of this, Amber was like, awesome, let's talk references and let's dive into this. And I think Amber, having such a familiarity with being in Palestine and having lived in Palestine for so long, it was so easy to talk about how we are going to capture this. Amber, I'll let you talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that's true. There was a lot. I mean, the verite stuff in Palestine is something that comes, I think, really natural, and it's easy. It's easy for me, largely because I just feel so much a part of that culture, so that I can go into a situation and there's sort of like a rhythm that happens that you can kind of anticipate. So I find like the verite, especially there, for me is I really love it but what was more of a challenge is how do we, have a really high production, like with these aerial shots, and there was a lot of stylistic shots on a very like small budget. And so that was more of the challenge. And I think for us, like it's actually really great. There was this young guy that had worked for me on Speed Sisters when he was about 16. I got him to do all the GoPros that were in the cars. He was just, some geeky kid that could, build his own camera and build a computer and and he's grown into this really great young DP that no one really knows about and has all of the equipment and the connections. And so we were really able to direct him in those aerial shots. And it was literally like, it's interesting because actually we were talking last night about, the difficulties of getting sort of permission or access into the courtrooms in Palestine. And it's really funny because now that I've come back to shoot in the US, it's like, it's so easy in comparison to getting, permissions here. But what we did is, because there aren't, there's not that many rules, there's just an occupation that if you get caught, you could really get into some serious trouble. But we went around on a holiday and just basically threw up a drone around mosques and like all over the place when people weren't really looking. And it was, I was thinking to myself, you would never be able to do this in the States or, in other places. And so I think that we were really able to, I think because we knew that place so well and had those connections, that we were really able to do a lot with the cinematography for like such a small, like on a shoestring budget, really.
Maybe can we see one of Deborah? Can we see that clip so we can get more of a sense of the feeling for the? It's an observational, right? Clip. Can you?
Yeah.
Tell us
So you're about to see one of the scenes in the courtroom, and I won't set up much of it. We'll talk a bit more after about the challenges that we had in capturing this. So I'll say what was really challenging in shooting these courtroom scenes is you can't move around. I mean, literally, I was sitting in the corner. Amber was sitting in the corner in a chair, and we were like completely static. The camera had to be static, so we brainstormed like, okay, how else can we shoot this? And we had a zoom mic in kind of the middle of things. We had a GoPro going on that we clipped either to Khulud's desk or in the corners. You see that, so it was very difficult because the GoPro batteries would like die after a case. And Khulud had so many cases coming in and out and in and out, and they just the Sharia courts are like can't get to it fast enough. She sometimes has 40 to 60 cases a day. And so, there's no time to switch out cameras. There's no time to switch out batteries. So it was just kind of shoot everything that you can. And then every time someone would come in, I would ask them, is it okay if we film? This is for a documentary. And then they would say, what is a documentary? We would talk about it really quickly. And if they said, no, I'm not interested, but you can film or you can record my voice, then it was shooting like hands and feet and all of that. But I remember Amber and I came up with this strategy. It was like, okay, let's follow an individual case like outside. So if you're shooting a case, then you go outside and shoot with them post-case, and then I'll come in and shoot the case. Yeah, tag teaming. But that didn't work because the amount of time that it like takes to leave a room, and then the next camera comes in, it was like we were bumping into each other, running into people, the court case would already start. So that was honestly probably one of the most difficult things. Amber, I don't know if you want to talk about that too.
It was really challenging, and like Erica said, like part of it is that you're sitting in a chair, and so because the rooms are so small and there's so many people coming in, you just physically, and then you also don't want to affect like what's happening, right? And then be respectful for the fact that if they've told you, like they won't, a lot of times we couldn't film faces, and so then you're trying to, you're down on the floor trying to, film feet, and people are looking at you like, why are you down on the floor? Like it was just very difficult. Sometimes I would like be in the doorway, kind of hiding with a zoom lens, trying to get, those types of shots and stuff. But I think that, you know, just because of the number of cases that went through, is that we were lucky enough to have a couple of people that would allow us to film those cases. And I think that we were just able, with the GoPro and then with enough cutaways, you know, you had, you know, it was, at the end of the day, we knew that we were only going to use so many cases. So I think how many days? It was like 3 days or something like that. But
yeah, there were 3 days back to back of just shooting tons and tons and tons of cases. And then, you know, if someone said you can only shoot your hands and feet, we were able to use that footage for other
I mean,
coverage.
we shot a lot, but it was difficult.
Did you ever think about following one of the family cases outside of the courtroom and following their trajectory, or?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, one of the ideas we had at the beginning of this was to really go outside and like get opinions of like how they perceived Khulud. And in the beginning of that, I shot a ton of that material. Like, how did you perceive this this adjudication, and what kind of domestic disputes is your family going through now? And that footage, it's not Khulud's story. It's very much like everything is happening through her eyes, so it felt like an obtrusive perspective that was coming in.
I want to get a sense of the audience in terms of who's here and around the profession. How many people here see themselves as, well, cinematographers or directors of photography? So, okay, that's pretty good. Directors? Okay, directors who also shoot? Oh, there are more hands. Okay, yeah. And producers? Here. Okay, good. So the title of this is The Secrets of Observational Nonfiction Film. So before we open it up, hopefully we can have, I know that everyone sort of have thought about things that they want to share, some kind of secret or a practice that they would like to share. So I'd like to really hear from each of you in terms of what are some of the things, either lessons you've learned from this particular project, and what that meant to you, and you know, how has it maybe shifted the way you work, or how have you adapted, and we'll take it to, you know, your next project.
So I do have one more clip that I think
sorry.
will address
Okay.
this also.
Okay.
But yeah, it'll address
Okay, let's
this.
show this. Yeah, so we can show it.
The clip quickly is one of our characters, Loser Twersky. He told us that he had a storage unit that he hadn't been to in a long time, and in the storage unit he had pictures and documents and basically everything from his past life when he was in the community. And we asked him if we could follow him to the unit the day that he was going to go kind of look through stuff, and that's what this scene is.
Okay, great.
So each scene that we filmed, you know, I think going to this question of, is there something that I've taken away, or there's a secret trade? You know, I'm going, with this scene specifically, I'm going into it thinking, you know, I have an idea of what will happen. I have an idea of what I want the scene to look like, what shots I'll need, even though I've never been in the space before. And I guess the question that I kind of have in the back of my mind is, if there's one way to capture the scene in one shot, what do I want? What is the ideal thing? What is the ideal frame that tells the story for me? And you know, we knew the theme of the scene going into it, that it was a piece of nostalgia for him, and he hasn't seen these photographs in a while, so you can expect that it'll be emotional. And the last shot for me kind of speaks to that, where I stumbled into this position and I knew I couldn't show his kids' faces, so there wasn't a question of shooting the photographs over his shoulder. And you know, once the light started hitting the lens, I realized that this was the shot. And you know, so in a lot of different spaces and scenes in the film, we hold on things a really long time, and we let, you know, you find that one shot, and then that's it. You accept that will speak to what you're trying to tell.
Jenny, you want to add something?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that this project was, in this film, was really unique for me in many ways, because there are just a lot of challenges, but also there, you know, we had a very small footprint, so there was only ever really 3 of us with one of these characters at a time, and we had spent so many years with them, so the relationship was more than just like the filmmakers and the cinematographer and the character. Like, we were also kind of friends with them, and I think it's funny, like Heidi had once said a long time ago that less is more. And it's a really important phrase to kind of think about, because so often in verite, you have very chaotic scenes, and there's like nothing more satisfying, right, than shooting a verite scene and you just like, it's like biting into a crisp apple, right? Like, you feel so good at the end of it because it's just, you know that you got it. And this project was so interesting because you had to kind of go against your instincts a lot, because you couldn't cover it in the way that you normally would, right? Like, there are faces you can't shoot, or you can't shoot from certain angles. So then it creates challenges that are unique because you have less options. And I found that it kind of made for better shooting in a way, because if I didn't have so many options, then you could find these really beautiful shots and stay on them for a really long time and compose these images that normally you would be not distracted, but thinking in your head of like how to cut the scene together, right? Because when you're shooting verite, you're also editing in your head. And because of that, we were able to like hold on these shots for so long. And because we knew these characters so well, you could read their faces and you kind of knew what they were. I mean, that's part of being a good cinematographer, is being able to read people. But specifically, I think with this project, we were really able to know. I mean, there were many moments I remember like filming, and they would say something, and it's like, okay, don't move right now, because what's about to happen in their face will end up being more important than if you were to go around and like get a shot of their hands, or like a dirty shot around the corner.
So 2 questions, because both of you mentioned knowing them so well. How long? I mean, the building of trust. How long of a process was that? And then 2, just so the 2 of you were often on the field together, and how did that collaboration work?
Alex is also the associate producer of the film.
Okay, yeah.
So often.
Did you both have cameras at the same? Or
No.
I see.
So if I was shooting, he would be the AP.
Okay.
And neither Rachel or Heidi would be with us. But I mean, the thing that was quite unique about this process is that we were all kind of also involved in finding characters. So, if I wasn't working, like Rachel and Heidi asked if I would come with them, to an event. And so I think because we were all kind of invested in meeting people, we were always there when we met. I mean, we all kind of worked together.
Yeah, we spent about 6 months before picking up a camera and filming, going to events where we met all of these individuals at an organization called Footsteps, which helps people who are leaving the Hasidic community get a foot outside in the secular world. And so we spent about 6 months going with Heidi and Rachel to, they would have holiday parties or art shows, and we would just meet people. And that way, when we began filming, everyone knew who the 4 of us were already, and it wasn't Heidi and Rachel bringing in someone new that
Similar to how
characters
Ross was talking, because when I shoot my own films, you are a little shy at first, because you don't want to start like throwing a camera in someone's face if you're meeting them for the first time. And it's funny, I actually haven't even thought about that until right now, how unique that was in a documentary. Like, rarely as the DP do you get to go in and meet the characters without shooting. And it just, I don't think it was on purpose, it just happened that way. And I think that it made it a lot easier for them, because they knew us as people.
Yeah, so kind of 2 things I can sort of resume for that. 1 is the off-camera time is just as important as when the camera's on, in terms of the building trust. And then 2, from constraints, you can build creativity. You have to flip the constraints into an opportunity for creative vision of your project. I've just been told that we have to go to Q&A, but I want to hear from them, Ross and Erica and Amber, before we do that. So tell us a little bit more about your takeaways, the most important for you as you work through.
I'll just be pretty quick. I'm just going to say that's one of the most beautiful scenes I've seen in a long time. Really beautiful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I don't know how to answer this, honestly. For me, the most important part of verite filmmaking is the editor. Mm-hmm. And, just get a great editor. That's like the key. They're expensive, but they're worth it. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any editors in the house? Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I know we have to go, so go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to say very similar things, that in the challenge it turns out to be an opportunity to be even more creative. And also, I mean, I spent a lot of time with Judge Khulud beforehand, and it was very much the relationship off camera that brought her this kind of larger to life character on screen. But I think two additional takeaways. One, don't judge your footage in the field. I think that's like a big life lesson for me, is that you never know how it's going to be used. And you never have. I mean, Ross, looking at your clip and your experience, that's a big takeaway for me. And then also, don't be afraid to break the rules. I mean, here we are with the Cinema Verite film, pitching it and talking about drone aerials and kind of recreations in quotes with our subjects. And I think that, there was some questions when we were making the film, like, okay, well, we can't really visualize that, or that's not really a true Cinema Verite film, and it's okay to break the rules, and it's okay to experiment, and it doesn't have to be, like, by the book.
I think for me, I didn't go to film school, and I actually just taught myself all parts of film. So like Speed Sisters was sort of my film school. I probably paid as much for Speed Sisters as I would have for film school. But and so I think for me, and especially as have now been doing quite a bit of cinematography, it's really easy to get kind of caught up in the technology, in the gadgets, I think for some reason, especially with women cinematographers, is sort of being afraid of the technology part of it. And I think one of the things that I've really come to notice is that isn't as important as your intuition and as you being able to feel what's happening, in reading people. And I think that a lot of times, specifically for women, we get intimidated by that. And I think it's really, I'm now working on a project where, they're spending, a ton of money, and they have, these guys with like these big cameras and all of the equipment. And then sometimes I go and shoot on the field, and repeatedly what's been coming back as the stuff that is like the most powerful is the stuff that I'm shooting. You get a small camera, and you're able to get intimate, and you're able to sort of really connect with who it is that you're filming with, and capture the emotion of the scene. And I think that is one of the things that I think we have to remember, is that it's less about the technology and more about like your own sort of intuition and feeling.
Oh, okay, we have many questions here. You can go ahead, and then you, Go, please. Good morning. Do I have to repeat the question? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear exactly.
I'm curious if you all use storyboards or shot lists. How do you approach it from following a writing perspective?
His question, he wants to know if they use storyboards or preparation, like scripting sort of shot lists for your when you go out on the field. Who would like to answer that?
I can answer that. No. Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? I think that you go into it with like a shot list and an idea of what it is that you want to shoot, and then be okay with throwing that away and sort of adjusting to whatever's happening, because it's kind of a balance between both of those things, because sometimes what ends up transpiring is better than anything you could have imagined or had planned for. So it's like being able to sort of be prepared, but at the same time be open to things changing.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna take it one step further. Like I don't think about it. I just want to go in with absolutely no preconceived notions or whatever. I want to go in fresh, to the point where maybe it's laziness, but I don't even sometimes know much about the subject because I want to learn about it like my audience will.
That's when you work, you're directing and shooting, or is it also, if you're working with a director of photography?
It's pretty much in life in general. I mean, yeah. I don't really work. Yeah, when I'm directing and shooting, yeah, just usually,
Okay.
yeah. And even when I was an editor for 8 years, and I didn't really want to know. I wanted to watch the footage and
Yeah.
figure it out from there.
I would say yes if I'm not going to be on set, and yes for the recreations. But otherwise, I mean, it was very go with the flow and see what happens and see what unfolds.
We always had an idea. Like, I mean, we would go into even any situation and sort of have an idea of what it is that we wanted to get out of it, and then just sort of like, whatever
Totally.
happened, yeah.
Alex and Jenny, you want to add in terms of how you prep before going on the field, maybe?
No, we don't use a shot list.
We don't use a shot list for every shoot, no. I mean, I think we had over 110 shoots on this film. But there were some instances, where we're flying to Florida and we're going to be there for 2 days. And what do we need in those 2 days? We're not going to fly back to get it. Luckily, this film is in New York, so if we miss something, if we missed a shot in a train, we can go back and get it on our way home. So if we're going somewhere where it's always one shot pretty much that you have to get things because it's verite. But there were times where we thought a little bit more methodically of what do we need.
You had a question? Oh, no? Oh, okay. Yes.
You've all shot emotional scenes with people that you've grown close to, and you want to capture those scenes. When do you put the camera down? When does it become, in any situation you've been in, just too much? I gotta put this down. I know I have to capture this, but when do you put the camera down?
So the question is, you've all shot very emotional scenes. At what point do you decide to put the camera down? When during those moments? Have you been in those situations where you've just said, it's just too much, this is going to hurt the relationship, to keep rolling? I'm looking at you, but I don't mean it. But go ahead.
I won't put it down. I think if I picked it up in the first place, it's because I have the trust with that person. So I'll wait for them to tell me to put it down, and then I'll happily put it down.
Yeah, there's been times where I've been filming though, and something has gone up, and I've had the camera in one hand and my hand on the person consoling them with on the other. So it's like it's because there is that feeling, and I'm sure we've all had it, where you're just like, oh, like, well, I do anyways, where I'm like, am I intruding right now? Like, at what point is this becoming? Am I taking advantage of this emotional moment? And it's true, like, they have given you that trust, but still you have that feeling when you're looking at it. And so I always just feel like there needs to be a way that they know that I'm not just there filming it, that I'm actually connecting with them and understand emotionally what's happening. So I've done that a couple of times.
That's interesting. So is putting the hand then maybe more about how you're feeling?
They may have been fine, but
Yeah.
there's so much vulnerability, especially with it was with Speed Sisters more than anything, where we were really, like, I did have a very, very close relationship with them, and I had sort of felt I may have pushed it too far, and expected too much, or them feeling, because of their relationship with me, that they didn't want to let me down, so would kind of go there. And it was just I mean, it was with that film specifically where I always just felt like I had to be, emotionally there for them as well while this was going on.
Yes, you had a question. I'm sorry, I was pointing the wrong person. Go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, I'm a camera person. I thank you, Amber, for bringing up about the technology, because I had a serious conversation about that, and I was freaking out. And I'm like, I can't go there with all this technology constantly changing, but thank you for bringing that up, because I'm like, I just keep it simple. I can't go here, there, and everywhere, because it just drives you and drains you. Thank you, though. I wanted to ask Jenny and Alex, What kind of cameras were you using?
So there was a question, first a comment of support for Amber's comment about technology and women, that she is a cinematographer who has encountered those situations and wanted to thank Amber for that. And the question to Alex and Jenny, what kind of cameras have you used?
Well, we shot on One of Us. Do you want to know what we shot on? So we used the C300 Mark II and a Sony A7S for some scenes.
I saw a hand up, yes.
This is a kind of an advice question. So I think many of you probably are hired as shooters to go in situations where the director or the producer is not there with you. You have a limited amount of time that you're supposed to go in and shoot. You guys were talking about being shy when you first go in. So how do you navigate if you have like a 5-day shoot with someone you've never met, and the director and producer aren't there? How do you get comfortable with them quickly and get what you need or what you think the director needs?
Okay. Many of you are hired to do this type of work, and how do you navigate your work over a 5-day shoot where you have not met the person and the director and producer are not present? How do you cut through and get the material you need to get in these situations? What advice can you give on that? Or what has your experience been?
I mean, are you talking about trust, or are you talking about like literally getting the shots you need and the story you need?
A little bit of both, right? You have to get them comfortable with you being there, and you have these expectations from someone that's not in the room with you about what you need to get.
Okay, so it's a little bit of both. You have the expectations of the person who's not in the room of what you're supposed to perform, so how do you navigate that?
Okay, I'll answer this question because this happened to me one time last year. I think I don't find that I'm as shy in those situations. I mean, usually you have a conversation with the director beforehand of what they hope that the scenes are going to be unfolding and the things that you need to get. And I think that, the person in this situation that I'm referring to, the people know that you're going to be filming with them, so they're not necessarily camera shy, right? You introduce yourself. Usually you're chatting with them while you're setting up the camera so that they don't feel, and this is specifically if you're like one person banding it. I've never gone on a shoot with a sound person without a director or producer. It's like if I've just gone off in the field by myself and I'm doing sound as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the people kind of get used to it and you're just capturing what's happening and mentally checking off the things that the director has asked you to get and that are important story bites.
Yes, you have the question, the person in red over there?
I thought it was interesting that all three films dealt with people who were speaking foreign languages that maybe you didn't understand, Yiddish or Russian or Arabic, just to greater or lesser extent. And how did you handle those situations where you're filming and you don't necessarily know what they're saying, and to make that judgment call of what's important and what's not, or did you just shoot everything?
Did everyone hear that? Yeah, okay. It's about a foreign language that you may not understand. I think some of people understand the language that's being spoken, but for those who didn't, how did you navigate and decide when to put the camera down?
It's funny because I'm excited to answer this because I've thought about this a lot, and it happens a lot. Sometimes it's better not to know the language. Sometimes it's all about feel, and when you don't know the language, it's all about feeling. And I remember I shot something in Born to Brothels, and it was like a 10-minute scene. People were running around, and I came back, and someone subtitled it, the editor, and I looked at it, and it was almost spot on what I needed and what I wanted. And it was amazing. And so sometimes it really works to your advantage. I'm sure sometimes it doesn't as well. But to me, it's all about feeling and sort of just reading people's faces and being able to really feel the emotion from all different parts of the room.
I agree with Ross. I actually think it's sometimes easier to shoot in languages you don't understand because you're, reading people better.
And it's also great because it's an excuse if you didn't do it well.
Yes. Oh, sorry, you wanted to say
I was just
something.
going to
Sorry.
say, it was an interesting situation with Amber. I mean, the first little while when I was shooting, I felt like it was a real hindrance to have me as a director, me as an interviewee, translating in my head. I don't speak Arabic fluently. I'm somewhat conversational. And it was like, and a tremendous weight was lifted off my shoulders when Amber came on board. And I mean, Amber does speak Arabic.
No, I don't. My Arabic is awful.
A little
It's
bit.
the biggest secret, as I lived there for so long and don't speak Arabic.
And it was, you know, to have some understanding of the language, but Amber has this incredible instinct in shooting verite. And if there were things that she was really focused on shooting, and I was able to pick up on, little language stuff, I would direct Amber to certain places. But
yeah, it was very much like for us, anyways, because I was shooting. Like I would know generally what they were talking, but like the general. But when it was something, basically I would shoot it, and then I'd have Erica, like as soon as they were shooting something that was no longer about the topic, just to tap me, and then that was my cue that I could get cutaways. So that was sort of how we would use because you're not going to use this whole entire conversation, and there's only going to be a certain part of it that's relevant. So it's just really knowing when they go off topic, and then you're able to cover it a lot better then.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
So much about the cinematographer and the director. You all have real sound issues, and it sounds so important, and of course we do. Can you talk about your sound solutions a little bit?
So the question is about sound solutions. We've talked about cinematographer and director. What are some of your solutions around being able to capture good sound?
I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure for the director or the cinematographer to carry that weight, because we're going into very intimate situations a lot. I mean, I've never had the luxury of being able to hire a sound person, because there's not space. There's not, these are incredibly tight, confined spaces. And, I understand that I'm not going to be able to capture the best sound, but I do the best that I can, and I make sure that I know, what I'm doing, and our team knows what we're doing way ahead of time. We practice that, and then I have a substantial amount for post saved in the budget.
Yeah, we for the most part didn't have a sound person with us on most of the shoots. We did for a certain number of them where we could, but a lot of the time, the space isn't big enough. If we're still building trust with people, with characters, putting a boom microphone in someone's face isn't the best way to introduce yourself. So we often would just, a shotgun mic on the camera, and then we would mic up our own characters, and they knew who we were, so that the dynamic was fine. And
That doesn't mean that things don't go wrong, though.
no, we had some serious issues.
Yeah, especially in that scene with Ari in the park. We had some sound issues. So, I mean, people will forgive bad camera work, but they will not forgive bad sound.
If you can get a sound person, bring a sound person.
And I'll just say one thing. Sometimes when you only have a shotgun on your camera and you have one radio mic, you have to, it always affects the camera work. Not always, but oftentimes. And sometimes you just have to approach the scene differently and know that if someone is saying something important and they're off shotgun mic, you got to move, and you have to point to them even though you're missing something else. And it's a drag, but
Okay, I want to thank our panelists. So one of us is available on Netflix yet. I highly recommend you to go see it if you can.
It's also screening tomorrow at Doc NYC.
And it's screening tomorrow at Doc NYC as well. And the judge is screening tomorrow morning. So if people have the opportunity, please go see. And E-Team, it's still available?
E-Team is on Netflix still.
Is on Netflix.
And you can see my next film in probably 7 years or so.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, and thank you to the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.